Alrighty, hello everybody. Thank you for joining today's virtual Mind Walk. My name is Monica and I'm with the Central Coast State Parks Association, or CSPA. And we're very excited that you're all here to join the virtual Mind Walks, which is a lecture series that we host in collaboration with the California State Parks in San Luis Obispo County. They happen twice a month, and you can see all of our upcoming Mind Walks using the link on your screen there. I can type it into the chat as well. You can see all the upcoming Mind Walks and our past Mind Walks on that page. The Mind Walks program is underwritten by the Thomas E. and Mary Catherine Eltsroth Fund and supported by us at the Central Coast State Parks Association. We're super excited for our speaker today. We're going to have a mountain lion presentation, and I will introduce Justin in just a moment here. And if you'd like to support the Central Coast State Parks Association and state park programs like the Virtual Mind Walk series, you can check out that link below, the Mind Walks link, which is centralcoastparks.org/friend, and you can help support educational programs in our state parks. All right, everybody, thank you again for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Justin. So Justin Dellinger is a large carnivore researcher with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and he's originally from the Appalachian Mountains of Western North Carolina. He's researched large carnivores for the entirety of his career in 5 different states, but still calls Western North Carolina home. He did his MS on red wolves and PhD on gray wolf and deer interactions. He's been in California for 6 years now. Originally, he was hired specifically for mountain lions, but in the last few years, he's become involved with other carnivores, including gray wolves, black bears, bobcats, and coyotes. He's been married 13 years to his wife, Nikki, also a native North Carolinian, and they have 3 kids, Jude, Sadie, and Ada, and they're still adjusting to California. All right, Justin, thank you for being here, and I'll let you go ahead and begin.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to talk, about mountain lions in California. And, as was mentioned, I've been doing this in California for a little over 6 years. So, I can talk for a while on this, but I'll try and shoot for the main points. Appreciate any questions that you might have, and hopefully this is informative. So anyway, let's get started. Can everybody see this okay?
Looks good.
All righty. All right, so first I'm just going to do a brief natural history, just so that we're all on the same page with our understanding of mountain lions. So, in California, our mountain lions aren't as big as other places, further north, say in Canada and such. So, male lions in California, about 120 to 160 pounds for adults. Females, a little smaller. I've only ever caught one female in California that weighed over 100 pounds, but if you go to some areas, that's sort of the norm. So possibly due to just milder climates here in California relative to other places. They don't need to be as burly to survive the colder weather. The way that we age animals is pretty straightforward. We look at their teeth. Mountain lions make a living with their teeth, so accordingly, over time, their teeth will show signs of wear. The main thing that we look at is the gum line recession on the canines. You can see, especially in this picture on the left-hand side, where there's like a little notch at the front of the canine there. The distance between that sort of notch on the front and the gum line is an indicator of age. So you can see this picture on the top right. The animals, one got really white teeth, and you don't even see that notch. So that is a subadult, about a 12-month-old animal. The one that I originally used as an example, that's probably, that's about 3 years old. And then this other one, she's just an old gal. We won't even put an age to her to make her feel bad or anything. We do think that females, their teeth wear a little faster than males, just because with young and provisioning for them, they have to kill more often. So yeah. How do we tell a mountain lion's male or female? Well, I'm sure plenty of you have cats at home, but interestingly enough, even a lot of degreed biologists have a hard time sexing wild felids. It's not like a canid or a bear. They're built just slightly different. So what we tell people to do is just look for the black dot. If it's a male animal, like in the top right, you'll see a black dot that's several inches, about the width of a hand, removed from the base of the tail. If it's if that black dot is right underneath the base of a tail, then it's going to be a female. Also, you can look at the underside. If it's a breeding age female, you'll see discoloration in the fur from where they've nursed. So in the bottom right there, you see that discoloration, it's browner in contrast to the other white fur on the underside. And also, we can check the reproductive status by looking at a female's underside and being able to tell if she's nursed or not. If she's nursed before, her nipples will be distended. If she's nursed recently, it'll be bare of hair around that area. So as you can see in these photos, I think there was actually one study that was done, and I think they estimated that biologists and houndsmen, all these people that have spent time around mountain lions, still only about 50% accurate at times in sexing these animals. So it's quite interesting that people still seem to have difficulty with it. So far, I haven't been caught being wrong, but yeah. Diet, probably no surprise. Deer is the primary thing, but they'll eat just about anything. House cats, raccoons, possums, skunks, all the way up to feral pigs, wild horses. I did work before coming to California, and collared some mountain lions there that were eating non-native oryx from that were imported from Africa. Collared a few animals in San Diego County that have regularly taken to getting in the San Diego Wild Animal Park and taking all sorts of animals there. So yeah, they pretty generalist as far as what they will consume prey wise. But for the most part, whether it's North America or South America where they range, the primary component is deer. If you've got a stable or robust deer population in an area, then you can probably bet that there's going to be mountain lions. And we're even starting to see that as they expand back to the east. Here's how we most often interact with mountain lions. I have the opportunity to capture them on a regular basis and radio collar them and follow them, but most people interact with mountain lions indirectly via the sign that they leave behind. So here in the top left, we've got a scrape, and these are most often made by males, and it's sort of acts as communication to other animals. Hey, this is my area. Females will mostly do this just when they're in heat. So yeah, if you pay attention, you can even tell what the sex of the animal that made the scrape just by the width of it. Male feet are a little broader, a little wider than female feet. The bottom left, scat, not often found, or not commonly found unless you know where to look. And females, especially females with kittens, will often bury their scat to sort of try and stay under the radar so they don't attract attention from large males that can, might want to harm their offspring. Probably the most common thing that we'll see from mountain lions are tracks. However, I will say I get pictures daily from the public, and I like getting those pictures from the public, but they'll think that they're what they found are mountain lion tracks, and often it's just a coyote or a dog or something else. You can see the toenail marks. With cat tracks, you oftentimes don't see, the toenails at the end of the toes. Another indicating feature is what I'll call the cleats on the back of the heel pad. You see there's like 3 lobes. That's pretty indicative of a cat track. Probably the coolest sign to see is in the top right there. That's a drag mark where, a mountain lion has killed something and drug it across a road or somewhere, and you're hiking or driving by and you see that. Generally, if you follow that drag mark, you might even find something like this, another sign indicating that mountain lions have been around. So space use, this is the one thing that is hard to conceptualize, even for biologists that have studied mountain lions, just how far they roam. A male mountain lion can roam, anywhere from, up here it says 300 square kilometers. That's a little over 100 square miles. We've even had some mountain lions collared that their home range was up to like 1,000 square miles. I mean, it's just amazing the distance that one individual will cover. Female home ranges are smaller. Generally, we say, 60 square kilometers, but, I would say 50 square miles is probably the upper threshold for a female. The reason for this is males will want to, try and have their home range overlap multiple females. Males are primarily concerned with how many girlfriends they can have. Females, as with female lions, as with most species, including people, with my wife being an example, they're all about efficiency. They want to find as small or as dense a pocket of deer as possible, so that they don't have to move around as much. And the reason for that is they're raising young, which takes a lot of energy in and of itself. So the more efficient they can be, then the less they have to run themselves into the ground to raise their offspring. So males, it's all about how many girlfriends they have. Females, it's all about being efficient and finding those pockets of a lot of resources, primarily food. Also with space use, it's important to note that it's mainly the males that disperse long distances. And so the males are sort of the necessary component for gene flow, so helping ensure that the areas don't become inbred. The females, most often, not always, but most often, will set up shop near their mother, sometimes even within their mother's home range, but generally more, local to where they grew up. Here's a figure. You can see these are dots with lines connecting the GPS locations of collared animals. The red and the white are 2 male animals. You can see how their home range is sort of, a butt right there with very little overlap. The other 3 animals are females, and you can see how these are all independent breeding age females, and they're sort of nested almost. And you can see how much smaller their home ranges are and how much they will, allow for or tolerate overlap from other animals. So lastly, on the natural history side of things, the conflict part, it's real interesting. I get reports of, people sending me, they saw a lion or they've got a lion on their property. And it's interesting in that the time that I've been here, come to find out, when I follow up and try and verify these sightings, that about 95% aren't actually even lions. It's, the neighbor's dog, it's bobcats, it's house cats, all kinds of stuff. Lions get mistaken for lions. I will say that the reporting accuracy has increased recently with people acquiring the video cameras and stuff outside their homes. But oftentimes, even with those still, somebody will send me a video of what they think is a lion, and it's a cat, but it'll walk right underneath, say, a chair. And, that chair only being about, 20, 24 inches off the ground or something. And it's like, well, that's definitely not a lion. Lethal attacks, they don't occur all that often. Obviously, when they do occur, they make the news just because it's such a, unfortunate event. But it is interesting that, we've got 40 million people in this state. We've got more lion habitat than any other state, and thus probably a good number of lions. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Yet lethal attacks are still very infrequent in California. Non-lethal attacks occur more regularly, but about every 2 years. I can say from radio collaring animals and just seeing how they move across the landscape, I would be very willing to bet a large amount of my paycheck on the hypothesis that every day in this state, there are at least a dozen, maybe 24 instances where people are, walk within pouncing distance, so 20, 30 feet of a mountain lion and never even knew it. The lion, I'm sure, knew they were there all along, but nothing, the people were none the wiser for it. So, these animals are very capable hunters. And if we were on the menu, I think we would know it by now. So, a lot of those attacks they're unfortunate, but I will say they are, statistically speaking, they're aberrations. So anyway, moving on, a quick background. A lot of people don't realize this. For, a large majority of mountain lion management in California, mountain lions were a bounty predator. That is that the state would pay someone to turn in evidence that they had killed a mountain lion. Most often this evidence was in the form of, a set of ears that had been skinned off an animal, or the tail, or something else. You could take that to the county courthouse and you would get a dollar amount in return. And it's interesting, even during the Depression era, you could get $20, $25 for a mountain lion, which is a significant amount of money during that time period and a significant incentive. During the bounty period, the Fish and Game, as it was then, actually employed up to 5 people whose jobs were to go kill mountain lions all over the state. And they were so good at it that they honestly worked themselves out of a job. During this time period from 1907 to 1963, our records show that about 12,500 mountain lions were taken throughout the state. So pretty interesting. After the bounty period concluded, lions were non-game mammals. So sort of like, non-game isn't really the best term, but they're sort of like coyotes. You could take them without really a permit, but there was no financial incentive. Then we had a hunting season for a very short period of time. We actually only had 2 hunting seasons where 180 animals were harvested. But immediately following that, during then Governor Reagan's tenure, mountain lions were legislation passed that protected mountain lions, and that legislation had to be renewed every few years. Well, that legislation sunset in 1986, and at that point, Fish and Game, as we were known then, began the process again to start hunting. So coming up with quotas, seasons, management units, all of that. But in 1990, the citizens of California voted to forever, ban mountain lion hunting in California. So in that 4-year window, when the department was gearing up to oversee a hunt again, they never got around to actually issuing or having a hunt. They got as close as tags even being issued, but the hunt was stalled right before the hunt began. So from 1990 till now, because of that vote by the citizens of California, mountain lions have been especially protected mammals. So we've actually not hunted mountain lions in this state since the early 1970s. So what that means, in the traditional sense, most wildlife agencies, the way that they understand and research wildlife is through hunter license sales. So the way we monitor our deer herd is we take the revenue from those deer tag and license sales, and we turn around and do monitoring and research on our deer herds. With no mountain lion hunting since the early 70s, there was no money coming in for the department to pay for, understanding what the status of our mountain lion populations were. And unfortunately, that's up until recently, that's left us at quite a deficit at knowing about our population. And all throughout that time period of, the bounty period and all that, the human population has continued to grow, as I'm sure we've all realized anytime we get out and drive. What does that look like from the air? Here's sort of just a quick, modified satellite image. This is from 11 years ago. So it's intensified even more. You can see the human development in the red areas, and in the natural, the still more natural areas that are lighter colored. And what this does is this development, removes available habitat for mountain lions, and it also brings people and mountain lions into closer proximity, or more regular and closer proximity to one another. And it can reduce the ability of lions to get around. And that can bring about things, like inbreeding. Here you see a kinked tail on a mountain lion in Southern California, indicative of inbreeding and inability of those young adults, especially the males, to get from point A to point B to exchange genetics. So anyway, that sort of outlines the where we currently, or how we got here in California with mountain lions. So just a few things that I want to put forth is like our what the department sees as objectives for mountain lions, ensuring persistence of mountain lions in California, ensuring healthy populations, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So we not only do we want lions to persist, but we want them to persist in sustainable numbers, and also just continually work to increase our knowledge of mountain lions in California for conservation and management purposes, not just related to mountain lions, but mountain lions are an important part of the ecosystem. So knowledge of them can benefit how we conserve and manage other species as well. So for this talk, I'm hoping to cover a few different aspects. First, talk about genetics, then demographics, which is population estimation and survival. Talk about habitat and connectivity, and then lastly, conflict and coexistence. So first, genetics. So this map in a publication that I helped with has become quite influential here lately. In how we think about mountain lions, how we address mountain lion policy, whether it's conflict or what. So what this map shows is sort of the different genetic clusters of mountain lions in California. And we've discovered that there's pretty much like 10 different genetic clusters. But I want to be clear, none of this is indicating that we have 10 different subspecies of mountain lions in California. It's literally just, distance by, or relatedness by distance. So an animal in the Western Sierra there in the blue, whenever it's, from the time it's born to when it grows up and disperses, it is still most likely going to stay within that population rather than disperse to another population. Sometimes that ability to go to another area is limited by the terrain. Between the Eastern Sierra and the Western Sierra, there's a pretty significant crest of mountains, the high Sierras, where there's little to no deer. So why would a mountain lion even want to go there anyway? So that, natural landscape features can help structure genetics in this way. And then also, human development as well. If you look in Southern California and you see the smaller populations, that's literally all attributed to human development that has created basically like habitat islands in those areas, as well as, the Bay Area, those animals, the black color there, cutting off the ability of animals in the Santa Cruz Mountains to go south to the Central Coast or, in other directions. So we do know from genetics that the Southern California populations are fragmented and isolated, and that's indicated by their, levels of inbreeding and that kind of thing, which we can tell from the genetics. The population in particular is especially inbred, and this has been the primary evidence that's cited for listing mountain lions in parts of California. And currently mountain lions are undergoing a status review by the department in Central and Southern California to determine if in fact they do warrant listing because of, how genetically inbred they are. So all of this suggests that genetics are an important thing to consider when managing a species. So now moving on to the demographics. And I will say, again, this is initially why I was hired to go out and estimate mountain lion populations across the state. Well, when I first got on, as a little bit of an exercise, I was like, well, let's see what we can already say. To estimate populations of anything, you need good data. And as I indicated earlier, there really hasn't been any data or money for one, but data secondly, any data really coming in for mountain lions since the bounty period. When a bounty was claimed, we would take the information on where that animal came from, the sex of that animal if possible, and all of this. And while yes, the bounty period might not have been the best approach to managing mountain lions, it was still data coming in. So what I did is I took all of that data, and since then the depredation data that we get, because that is, again, that's data that we can use in a sense. And I did some modeling, and what you can see, some population modeling, and what you can see is that when we had lots of data coming in the form of the bounty period, we have pretty good understanding of what our lion population was doing, and in this case, it was declining. Since the end of the bounty period, the data coming in has been very sparse relative to what it was before. So our understanding of what the population is doing has become very blurry since then. You can see the different simulations up through when I did these simulations. It's a pretty broad, interval there, such that we really have no clue what the mountain lion population was doing, given that we had such little data points coming in. And you can see that the department has made efforts in the past at some different point estimates, but some of that was just back of the napkin type stuff, not terribly scientifically robust. The black line going through the middle there is sort of the average of all those simulations. So we're pretty confident that the bounty period did do what it was intended to do and decrease the population. But since then, we feel like the population has likely experienced a rebound of some degree. So where do we go from here? Well, when I came on board, I was again hired to estimate lion populations statewide. Now, as we've mentioned, or as I just pointed out, single data points, very little use. So hopefully, how can I come up with the intent was, how can I come up with a method that can be replicated over time, such that we get multiple data points across time and start to get trends and understanding. Well, if you really wanted to, I guess, go about it the best possible way, it's basically going out and capturing and radio collaring animals. But it is very expensive to do this. You know, these are low density animals that cover huge amounts of territory. So catching when we're out there, generally speaking, you're talking a good capture rate is about 1 animal a week, but you're working every day of that week. So you can see that it's expensive. But this isn't something that you can replicate, obviously, given how expensive it is and the I guess the highly developed skill set that's needed to pull this off. You know, using highly trained dogs, or baiting and trapping, all of that kind of stuff. It takes lots of years of experience to do it efficiently. So what I've been trying to do is come up with some less or non-invasive methods for monitoring populations. And what we've implemented here is using detection dogs. So sort of like a bomb dog or a drug dog. You can train a dog to go sniff out various sign or scat of wildlife to determine presence. And so we got some dogs, and we worked with them and used them to go out and survey the landscape for mountain lion scat. And from that scat, we could do genetics on the scat, determine the individual fingerprint of that animal, and get a population estimation or population estimate that way. However, in some areas, given that this is a newer method, yes, it's cheaper, but since it's newer and we don't quite understand it fully, we did go and radio collar animals in some of the areas where we employed the scat dogs, just to compare the two approaches and see how they did. So here's where we did this across the state. So we had 12 areas across the state where we implemented the scat dog method. And about half of those, we went in and radio collared animals. So we put marked animals on the landscape. When we radio collared those animals, we take a DNA sample from them, which we can then use as a reference library for our scat samples that are collected. So we can see, okay, how readily did we detect known animals on the landscape through this newer, cheaper method? I'll zoom in here on one of the places where we worked, Fort Hunter Liggett in Monterey County. So here is the place where we went in and we radio collared a few animals over about a 2-month period. We caught 7 adult animals. We caught some subadults, but didn't end up collaring them. And here's their movement patterns. The background is just showing general habitat use, likely high quality lion habitat or not there around Halan. So then after we radio collar animals and put marked animals on the landscape, we gridded off the area, and the gridding is just to help space things out. And then we take the scat dogs out and we survey each of those grids about 4 times, trying not to overlap those transects. This all occurs over about a month's time period. And, the total area surveyed anywhere from about 1,200 to 3,000 square kilometers. So, surveying a decent amount of country. Here you can see the grids. You can see the blue is sort of the GPS tracks of the dogs, and the yellow is where they detected scat. Now, here's a closer up look of the transects with elevation in the background. What we really tried to do was focus in on landscape features that would facilitate detection of mountain lions, like drainages or ridge lines or saddles, those kinds of things where mountain lions would be likely to be traveling through and at some point deposit scat that the dog could smell. So we've done this, like I said, all over the state. We got genetic fingerprints from all these animals, and we've done some analyses. These aren't final. We've still got data from 2 of those 12 areas to add into our analyses. So we expect this number to go up with those new that additional data. But here's what we have so far. we have an average statewide of about 1.15 lions per 100 square kilometers for an overall abundance of just over 4,700 statewide. And then you can see the confidence intervals over there. When we add these two additional areas that we're hoping to add next week into our analyses, we expect that overall abundance to increase, but the confidence intervals around them, around that number, to decrease. So having more confidence about what our overall abundance is. And it's also important to keep in mind that with this method, yes, you can detect small kittens and stuff, but you're probably less likely to do that. So this is mainly an estimate of the number of adults and large subadults out there on the landscape. We're really probably not picking up younger animals, say like 10 months or younger. So I wouldn't look at this as a total population. It's more like a large/mobile individuals. Another thing that's important to know outside of just a head count of how many animals are out there is the survival rates of your animals that are out there. So we've been collaring lions for a little bit, whether it's the department or independent researchers with universities for a little while. And we've taken some of that data and looked at it and looked at annual survival rates of animals. And we've done a little bit more than what's shown here. Here is just male and female. We've also broken it down into, adult female, subadult female, and so forth. But you can see that our females have higher annual survival than our males, which is no real surprise. And these survival rates actually fall within the expected realms that we've seen in other areas throughout a mountain lion range in North America and South America. And then here's sort of what the sources of mortality are. You can see that the sort of that off yellow is the highest source of mortality throughout a given year for mountain lions. And what that off yellow color represents is management actions, mountain lions being killed for management actions, mainly depredation. So where they'll go and kill domestic animals, and then they are lethally removed after that. So humans, in fact, are the largest source of mortality for mountain lions in California. Outside of the management, vehicle mortality is another large one. You can see it's the pink one in there that contributes to mountain lion mortality on the landscape. So this isn't terribly surprising. Mountain lions are an apex predator out there on the landscape. They really don't have any. There's no other animals out there really that will take them, and so humans are the most likely way that they meet their demise. So overall, from our demographics, densities and survival rates do not look concerning at the moment. We've got a good number of animals, survival rates look fine. What we hope to do in the very near future is combining density and survival rates to have some projections of what we think the population is going to do over time. And it's also important to understand that the population estimates are more irrelevant with each passing year. So there's the need for, replicating these efforts, say every 5 to 10 years, so that you can start to understand trends. So now moving on, I'm going to talk about habitat and connectivity. So, on the left here is just a map of California with the different habitat types. And you can see on there, there's different, this is location data from different mountain lions that we've radio collared, either the department or universities or other collaborators. And what I was able to do is combine this data and come up with a habitat layer, which you see on the right there. The darker colors of orange indicate good lion habitat. The lighter colors indicate areas that not so great lion habitat. So from these analyses, it looks like about 170,000 square kilometers of California is lion habitat. So about 40% of the state area-wise, which is pretty good, especially given how big of a state California is. Then looking at connectivity and population viability, what I did is we took suitable habitat on the x-axis, and I took effective population size on the y-axis. And effective population size is a genetic metric. Basically, effective population size, you get enough animals and you can determine from the genetic diversity how many animals in a given population are passing on their genes to the subsequent generation. And these genetic metrics were derived from that genetics work that I showed earlier. And here I've done that for each of those 10 populations in California, where I relate the amount of suitable habitat in each of those available to each of those genetic populations with the effective population size. And you can see on here, it's a pretty tight correlation. It's pretty fascinating. And if you just take overall habitat, which is in the blue line, and correlate that with effective population size, you get an R square of 0.97, almost 1. So that's extremely impressive. If you take the amount of protected suitable habitat and compare that to effective population size, it's still a pretty high value. And what we were able to learn from this is that if you just have overall habitat, you need about 16,000 square kilometers of intact habitat to have a genetically viable mountain lion population. If all of that habitat is protected, it seems to have a higher value than overall habitat. And we don't think that has anything to do with the habitat itself. More than likely, it's just due to the fact that in those protected areas, animals have better survival rates and are able to pass on their genetics more readily. So you have a higher effective population size. So if all of the area is protected, you actually only need about 8,000 or 9,000 square kilometers of suitable habitat to have a viable population. I say only, that's still a lot of land, but it just shows the importance of those areas where lions don't experience as much mortality. These are those different populations on that genetic map. So basically what you see here is that we've got a few populations that the Western Sierra Nevada and the North Coast that are above both of these thresholds. So even if all of the unprotected habitat was developed, there would still be enough habitat in those areas for a genetically viable population. In the Eastern Sierra Nevada, they are below the overall threshold, but above the protected threshold, because all of the habitat in that area is protected. So really, we don't have any concerns about that population either. The Central Coast is an interesting one in that right now they are above that threshold of 16,000 square kilometers. However, very little of that habitat in the Central Coast is protected. So there is the possibility that population, that habitat in this area could become developed, and that population could become further fragmented. And that would then fragment the population genetically as well. We've got 5 populations in the state that fall below both of these thresholds. So we need to do something to connect them back to larger populations and restore connectivity, or else these populations just are not genetically viable long term, and they will blink out if something isn't done. So, it's interesting. We have more lion habitat than any other state, but our connectivity in some areas is not good. We can say that protected habitat is better than overall habitat, not because of the quality of the habitat, but it's likely because in those protected areas, animals have different survival rates. And also we can start to say something about the minimum habitat thresholds for having a viable lion population. So this confirms and expands previous concerns from our genetic work about which areas of the state the populations might or might not be viable because of the amount of habitat available to them. Lastly, I'm going to talk about conflict and coexistence. So here's a figure that shows depredations over time. Now you'll have to excuse that big dip there from say 2000 to about 2015. That is all human, cause of people. We switched from a paper reporting system to an electronic reporting system during that time period. And unfortunately, a lot of our permits, we think, went into a black hole. So there wasn't a huge drop. We don't have any reason to think that there was actually a huge drop in depredations. Just a lot of that changing over from the reporting medium caused us to lose a lot of data there. But either way, we can say that depredations have increased over time since 1972 when the depredation system started occurring. And mostly that increase in depredation is due to small hoof stock, sheep and goats. Sheep and goats account for anywhere from 75 to 90% of all depredations throughout the state. Interestingly, cattle are very rarely depredated in California, at least confirmed depredations. Generally, it's less than 10 a year throughout the state. And for pets, it's also relatively minimal compared to sheep and goats. Also, interestingly, I took all of the data from our depredation data. And if you look at the number of lions removed in previous years, and then you compare that to the number of depredations in that same area the following year, not number of lions removed the following year, just number of confirmed depredations the following year, you actually get a positive relationship such that for every one lion removed, the following year, you are likely to have a 10 to 11% increase in depredations the following year. Now, the reason for that is, or at least the reason that we believe, is you're pulling animals out of the system, and lions being territorial, the subadult animals are constantly looking for open spaces on the landscape. So when you pull an animal out of that system, you're creating an open space that several young dispersing animals will fall into and try and fill in behind that removed animal. So you can get a small temporary influx in lion density by removing animals. However, there's obviously an upper limit to this. If you remove every lion in the area, then there's nothing to backfill. So there is an upper threshold to this. Also, this assumes that you're removing lions in areas within a portion of a larger area of contiguous lion habitat and presence. This wouldn't work if you were, say, on an island, so to speak. But still real interesting that the way that we respond to conflict can have social and behavioral consequences to lions. And it also helps explain why with our depredations, most often it is subadult males that are involved in depredations. So again, they're the ones that are really looking for, dispersing, looking for new places on the landscape. If you pull out an animal, you get a few subadult males coming in, jockeying to take over that territory. They're still young. They don't know where the deer herds are hanging out in that area. So they go for the easiest thing out there, which is probably a sheep or a goat or something that's conveniently pinned up for them. So basically, to wrap up with the conflict and coexistence, we can say that depredations, and until recently with the recent policy changes, depredation take for lions was increasing. Hobby farms, again, sheep and goats, are most often involved in lion depredations, and young males are the most common culprit. We know that removal can drive future conflict, again, to a degree, and then, but unfortunately, we still don't have really any understanding of how to deter lions from depredating. So we do need some research in that realm. However, if you just have a handful of sheep and goats, we do know that a pen like this one works really well. Obviously, your animals, when you let them out night or day, can still be taken, but at least while they're in this pen, very little chance of a lion getting to them. So in summary, to wrap up, we knew we had, if we were just looking at our density and survival rates, we wouldn't have any concerns. If we were just looking at our overall habitat, we wouldn't have any concerns. However, when we look at all this stuff in conjunction, you know, the genetics, connectivity, as well as the other, we start to understand that there's no one metric that's suitable to indicate whether a population is doing well or not. You know, you have to take a broader approach to it. And I think that's one real important thing that's been eye-opening for me. You know, I just always considered, you know, if your population estimates look good, then your population is fine. And what we're learning is that that's not always the case. We've got some complex topics and issues that are only going to be addressed via collaboration. And mainly what I mean with that is the connectivity piece. So 40% of the habitat, or 40% of California is lion habitat. 50% of that habitat is protected. And by that, I mean Forest Service land, you know, conservation easements, that kind of thing. Well, the other 50% means it is not protected. The majority of that unprotected habitat is what we call working landscapes. So landscapes with, you know, agricultural purposes, you know, livestock production. What we need to do, in my opinion, is collaborate with these agricultural operations, trying to ensure that their operations stay in place, but yet that they can also serve as a function for wildlife. If those operations go under, likely it's going to be balled up and developed, which is even less value to wildlife, and as well, you know, lions being a part of that. So these complex topics where partnering with the agricultural community, which is most often seen as being, say, against lions, which I know isn't the case, it's just sort of the public perception. They can be really key in ensuring that not only our lion population in California, but wildlife in general, you know, are able to get from point A to point B, and that there's more habitat out there, that there's better connectivity. So collaboration in that regard is key. Also, you know, as I keep indicating, point estimates are of little value after a time period. So regular monitoring is ideal. And this isn't just for lion populations. This is for all our populations if we want to monitor, or if we want to manage and conserve them to the best of our ability. And hopefully with all of this science, we can have adaptive approach and inform policy with science. So anyway, I've been talking for a little while now. I appreciate y'all's time, and hopefully that was informative. I'd just like to thank all these different groups that I regularly work with, and I'll take any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was so fascinating. I really enjoyed that, especially that genetics map when you were talking about that. We do have a lot of questions that came through, so I'll just go ahead and dive into that. Folks, if you have any questions that you want to ask, go ahead and use the Q&A box or the chat box at the bottom of your screen and we'll get to them. First question, during the daytime, where and how do lions spend most of their time? Are they in trees? Are they sleeping?
That's a good question. I mean, I've caught a lot of lions and come across jumped a lot of them. I've never jumped one that was just automatically in a tree. It's not like leopards in Africa necessarily. And throughout a large portion of their range, again, they are sort of the top animals. So during the daytime, they are resting, but oftentimes it's, you know, on the ground in a day bed kind of thing. The only times where, you know, I've seen animals in trees, whether it's in the news or media or personally, is when I can deduce pretty readily that they went up there for an escape of some sort, whether they were ran up there by dogs or they felt threatened, you know, when they turned up the middle of town and they just took to a tree to try and escape. So most often they're just sort of resting in a day bed that they've sort of scraped out for themselves on the ground.
Got it. Thank you. Is there just one species of mountain lion in the US? And if not, how far beyond California does the California mountain lion species reach?
Yeah, so in across most of, pretty much all of North America, you starts to get a little different when you get towards southern Latin America and South America. Um, yeah, it is all one subspecies. So the Florida panther, all the way to California, Canada, all the way through Mexico, it is all one subspecies. And to be more direct towards the question, one species, yeah, there's only one species of mountain lion in the whole world. There are subspecies of mountain lions, but again, even within North America, most of North America, and definitely within the US, it's the same subspecies. So the only real genetic differences that exist within that subspecies in the US is just from isolation and inbreeding brought about by human development and that kind of stuff.
Got it. Thank you. Do you have an estimate of the number of deer killed per year per lion?
No, we don't, because we know that it's not as straightforward as, like, say, a back of the napkin, where if you've got a number of lions, then you can just calculate, how many deer they'll eat. One, because depending on whether it's an adult male, a single female, or a female with kittens, their kill rates will vary pretty dramatically from one another. A female with kittens, her kill rate might be double that of an adult male, just because she's got more mouths to feed. Also, depending on where they're at, deer might make up still the majority of their diet, but it might only be 40% of their diet. We know that lions in Southern California and in desert areas, coyotes and other mesocarnivores like bobcats and stuff make up a large amount of their diet, actually. So that's another thing. Also, we know that lion kill rates are directly influenced by bear densities. So the more bears you have, the more likely that lion is to be pushed off of that kill, whatever it is, by a bear before it can actually finish the meal. So up in the North Coast, where we've got a lot of bears, we know that lion kill rates are higher because of, they might only get one or two feedings off of that deer before a bear comes along and pushes them off of it. And then they have to go kill again. So there's lots of things that really influence kill rates.
Thank you. One question came through. Are you the Justin Dellinger that I'm reading about in Fuzz by Mary Roach, featured in chapter 6, titled Mercurial Cougars, How Do You Count What You Can't See?
Yep, that's me. So yeah, it was a lot of fun hanging out with and getting to know Mary. So yeah.
Thank you. So we have a celebrity on our call, is what I'm hearing. All right, let's see. Based on your habitat and connectivity maps, it seems as though lions can do just fine in arid regions such as Southern California. Why do you think that is, or can you comment any further on lions in dry habitats?
Yeah, I mean, we know that they're very generalist species. I mean, they range all the way from the Yukon in Canada down to the southern tip of South America. And, that basically takes them from boreal forest down to temperate forest, Mediterranean habitat, desert, the jungle, all of that. So they can, and they used to exist from the Atlantic to the Pacific here in North America. So they're just such a adaptable and generalist species with, how they can make a living. We've got some animals that are literally making a living right on the edge of development. Where development is, there's lots of small prey, raccoons and skunks and coyotes and stuff that are attracted to those areas. And we know lions can live and reproduce in those areas as well. I think a lot of it is just because very simply they can eat a lot of different stuff, and really all they need to acquire that food is just a little bit of cover to help facilitate hunting. So yeah, and as far as the drier habitats, they're so wide ranging that as long as there's a little bit of water here and there, it doesn't matter as much that if it's say 20 miles distance from one water source to another, they can cover that. Just because the spatial scale at which they operate. Right.
Thank you. Are there opportunities for lay people to get involved in big cat conservation?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to help, raising awareness locally, about what you can do to mitigate conflict, trying to, put up your domestic animals at night, dogs and cats, trying to create, effective pens for some of the backyard animals like the sheep and the goats to mitigate conflict. That's huge. Raising awareness on, the importance of habitat and connectivity, and how our landscape is developed is a big one. As far as more hands-on stuff, research, I know that there's plenty of folks out there that do really utilize, say, citizen science for understanding populations of wildlife, including mountain lions. A lot of what that mainly looks like is through helping maintain game cameras, looking at occupancy or of mountain lions and other critters in an area. The capturing and radio collaring is a little difficult to get the public involved in, just because it's you're using drugs that are possibly lethal, and you're covering terrain that is there's no trails. You're bushwhacking and army crawling, so there's just some liability issues with all of that, and so it's a little harder to get folks directly involved, hands-on with, say the capturing and collaring and stuff. But there's definitely ways to get involved.
Thank you. The next few questions looks like it's kind of specific to our area here on the Central Coast. Do you happen to have an update on the lion that crossed the 101 and 405 freeways? I haven't heard about that.
I'm guessing that's the Griffith Park lion. There's been several, but he's the most famous. P22. He's still around. He's getting quite old, and as of right now, we don't have reason to believe that he's ever found a girlfriend. He's sort of been bachelor his whole life. So yeah.
Thank you. Do you happen to have the approximate population in SLO County, San Luis Obispo County?
Well, so I had that map that I showed, which shows statewide. Here, let me see if I can get back to it. So here's that map that shows statewide. You can see that most of the higher densities generally are in the northwest, with intermediate densities in SLO. I mean, I could take it, and clip this map down to that county and just add up the values of those pixels. I haven't done that yet, but it could readily be done. I apologize for not having an exact estimate for San Luis Obispo County. I will say, I've worked all over the state and catching lions. It does seem like San Luis Obispo County, it's just like this map indicates. there's lower densities in San Luis Obispo County than in other areas that I've been, but it's also not the area with the lowest densities that I've experienced. So you're sort of sitting right in that middle ground from my experience.
Got it. Thank you. Are there any highly studied or otherwise famous or infamous mountain lions in SLO County?
To my knowledge, I'm the only one that's ever collared lions in San Luis Obispo County, and it wasn't very many, and none of them are around anymore. So, you know, mountain lions, given that, you know, an adult male might only live to be, say, 6 to 8, and a female might live to be 10. They don't last as long as the researchers studying them do. So, so yeah, there currently aren't any collared lions in San Luis Obispo County.
Thank you. And then another question came through. Any comment on the 3 seen along the Bob Jones Trail recently?
Don't know anything about that. So, and I'm also kind of drawing a blank on the Bob Jones Trail and exactly where that is. So,
Avila Beach, San Luis Obispo area.
Okay, I'd have to see a photo. It's probably a mom with two dependent young, and it's important to keep in mind that you know, you'll get these pictures where it'll be like 6 mountain lions, all full-grown size mountain lions, but really what you're looking at is a mom who's got teenage young that are as big as she is. Like, you know, for some of y'all out there, and I was the same way. Whenever I was in high school, I was already bigger than my mom. I still depended on her to feed me, but I was bigger than her. So that sort of gets forgotten if you see pictures of, say, multiple what look like full-grown animals. They might be all full-grown stature-wise, but there's really still just the one mom that's provisioning for all of them. Okay, so large and too small. Yeah, probably just a mom with kittens. So yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Fela, for clarifying. For those who can't see the Q&A, I guess there are animal cams of large and too small going along yards along the trail in the last couple of months. Thank you. Another question, is rodenticide still an issue with mountain lion deaths?
Yeah, and that's a good question. That's one that, you know, it's honestly been kind of our understanding of that is a little murky. You know, for a few years, we actually sampled every mountain lion taken on depredation, which amounted to, I want to say, over 200 animals that we tested their livers, and 97% of those animals came back as having rodenticide in their system. But so basically, it didn't matter where they came from, whether it was wilderness, or, you know, the middle of a big city, or whatever, they all had it. And we only necropsied 1 or 2 of all of those. I want to say just 1 that had definitive signs of rodenticide poisoning, where when you open the body cavity, there was hemorrhaging, you know, just blood freely in the body cavity. And that one did have a high amount of rodenticide in it from the testing. So I guess it murkies the water, or it muddies the water, because we found it everywhere. It was kind of surprising in that regard. I would guess, since we found it in all the mountain lions, unfortunately, it's probably in most of the human population too, since we also sit at the top of the food chain like mountain lions. But we didn't find that it was a major source of mortality, which is something that in the media has been expressed differently, unfortunately. Also, we have no idea what the threshold level of rodenticide poisoning is for lions. So, you know, we got some results back of lions where the rodenticide exposure level was super high, but this animal was just hit by a car, healthy, a lot of good body condition. It just crossed the road at the wrong time, and that's why it was dead. So there's still a lot that we don't understand about the rodenticide stuff. I would say the main takeaway from it, what we learned in that, is that unfortunately rodenticides are everywhere, at least with mountain lions. And given that they were in most of the mountain lions, they're probably in most of our ecosystem, most of the animals in our ecosystem, and possibly including us. So something to think about.
Thank you. And then it looks like we just have one more question. What is the average litter size and how often do females give birth?
Yeah, that's a good question. Average litter size, generally 2 to 4. Sometimes you'll get 5 in there. There's some places where if you have a really high prey density, they might only stay with mom a year, and then the mom will take a few months, say 2 to 3 months, and then she'll cycle back into heat. And then after 3-month gestation, she'll have another litter. Sometimes if it's lower prey density, the subadults might stick around longer. They might stay with mom up to 2 years. Still, you would have that same cycling. So after they leave, she might take a month or two to take a breather, so to speak, and then cycle back in, and 3-month gestation. But female lions are gluttons for punishment. They if they lose their young, they'll cycle back in pretty quick and try and reproduce again. So, and it's important to note that lions, there is no real breeding season. They can have kittens pretty much any time of the year.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was all of our questions. Thank you, Justin, for joining us. That was super fascinating. I'm going to have to share this recording with everyone I know.
Yeah, no problem.
A couple things for everyone who's still in the call. Thank you to everyone who joined today. If you're local on the Central Coast, we do have a couple state park events going on this weekend and in the next few weeks. So you can check out our website, which is centralcoastparks.org, if you want to get out in the parks and learn some more stuff. Also, when you close out of this window, there will be a small survey that pops up. It's not required, but it's just very helpful when it comes to planning these mind walks. So again, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Justin, and we'll see you all next time.